Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I count it a distinct privilege to rise in this honourable House on behalf of the wonderful people of the great constituency of Fox Hill. Before I begin my remarks on the Criminal Evidence Witness Anonymity Amendment Bill 2018, I would like to send out congratulations to Coach Spence and the girls basketball team of George Johnson Senior High School. They went up to Grand Bahama, Central Grand Bahama, and won the championship for the second time in 3 years. As Principal James Clark would tell you, whenever the championships are held or wherever they are held, George Johnson Senior High girls will be a force to be reckoned with. I add my congratulations to those of Central Grand Bahama and Paul Pine in congratulating our Barista and Commonwealth Games teams. Our tradition of record-setting at both the Barista and Commonwealth Games continues. I was actually looking at some of the results from the Commonwealth Games, and in particular, you know, the long jump is of interest to me. I'll tell you what. The long jump was won in 6 meters, 80-something, in 2018. In 1982, a young one from Fox Hill competed in those Commonwealth Games, the long jump, and won a gold with 6 meters, 91. So that would have won a couple weeks ago. I want to address some comments in relation to, I would like to address some comments in relation to a private entity being reported as willing to construct a preschool on the campus of Sandlands Primary School in Fox Hill, and the Ministry of Education's failure to take up this offer. I can categorically and emphatically state that there is no such proposal before the Ministry of Education. Preschool education is the primary focus of the Ministry of Education. With no disrespect intended, the Ministry of Education would have been foolish to ignore such an interest from a citizen if it in fact existed, and it did in fact not exist. Some people believe that all press is good press, and so are apt to say many things to remain part of the news. I am also very happy to report that the government and board of the Fox Hill Community Center have come to an arrangement that satisfies both. The Fox Hill Community Center remains the wholly owned private property of the Fox Hill Community Center Association. The government has offered the owners of the community center a wide variety of social and educational programs that will benefit the people of Fox Hill. Currently, the board of the Fox Hill Community Center is working with the government on a memorandum of understanding for additional services and support over and above those already offered. I am pleased to report that the people of Fox Hill and the nation, I am pleased to report to the people of Fox Hill and to the nation generally that the negotiations, though long, have been conducted in an amicable and respectful atmosphere. Now to the Criminal Evidence Witness Anonymity Amendment Bill 2018. Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, I attended the funeral of Marilyn Ferguson, the mother of Shanique Sands. In addition to our physical illnesses, I believe that Ferguson's demise was further hastened by the overwhelming sadness of a broken heart. On this same day, I stopped by the post-Easter egg hunt of the Fox Hill Urban Renewal Center. One of the organizers and a staff member was Mrs. Sonia Kemp, the mother of Shaquille Demerit, who was killed in December 2013 on that same park. She smiles, puts on a brave face, goes out of her way to help others, but she too is nursing a broken heart. Mr. Speaker, I read from an article in the Tribune of Friday the 2nd of March 2018. A date in late 2019 has been set for the trial of 3 men accused of being the perpetrators of the fatal Freedom Park Foxhill drive-by shooting that claimed 4 lives and injured 7 others 5 years ago. A trial date between November 11th and 22nd, 2019 has been set to hear the case in the Supreme Court. If this amendment was in place in 2014, 2015, 2016, Mr. Speaker, would it have to take just days short of 6 years to bring this case to trial? Would it have taken this long to obtain justice for Claudino Davis, Shaquille Demerit, Eric Morrison, and Shanique Sands? I believe the mothers, the wife, and family of those murdered would believe that they would not have to live with the roller coaster of stops and starts of court dates and the rawness they bring up each time a date comes and is reset. Mr. Speaker, this is all I have to say. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the families of Shanique Ferguson Sands, Shaquille Demerit, Claudino Davis, and Eric Morrison, and on behalf of all Bahamians suffering the real heartache and pain of extreme crime, Foxhill supports the second reading of this bill.
As many? The chair recognizes the honourable member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the ever tenacious constituents of West Grand Bahama and Bimini. I also take this opportunity to encourage all my constituents to keep the faith in yourselves, your present pre-national movement administration. Your decision to put us here was not in vain. I admonish every citizen of this country and those that call it home, do not mind the fake news or false reports inundating social media in particular, suggesting that this government is not working on your behalf. Do not abandon us, because we are certainly not abandoning you. Mr. Speaker, we live in a country that is closely knitted, and oftentimes because of that, we find ourselves between what may be considered a rock and a hard place. When it comes to the criminal elements of our society in particular, because we basically all know each other, holding one another accountable for wrongful acts we commit is often overlooked. The reasons vary, and in the case of our justice system, intimidation by those committing the crimes or persons associated with them is often the primary reason why those who can make or break a case shy away from doing so. Mr. Speaker, testifying in court is one of those areas. Can we blame those individuals, Mr. Speaker, who opt to mind their own business when truth be told? As a society, we have some ways to go when it comes to halting the spreading of information that can be harmful to our very own brothers and sisters. You find, Mr. Speaker, that there are persons who witness crimes unbeknownst to the criminal. The information that they may have is often vital, but because they are in fear that if they were to come forward, not only will their lives be put at risk, but that of their families. Mr. Speaker, there are many windows that we look out of, many spots that we are stationed, many cars that we drive passing by, and unknown to the criminal is the person in these areas who can attest to their criminal behavior. These persons want to come forward, and this bill is the beginning of them finding the courage to do so. This bill, Mr. Speaker, has several factors that speaks to our seriousness as a government to ensure a better Bahamas. We are serious about justice being served for victims of crime. We are serious about protecting the lives of individuals who serve as witnesses to criminal acts, many of which are heinous. We are serious about ensuring that we have a system and legislation in place that will demonstrate our commitment to justice. Mr. Speaker, this is a good bill. It's good for our people. It's good in the fight against crime. It's good in demonstrating that as a government, the lives of our citizens matter, and we are determined in our efforts to protect them. Mr. Speaker, we are about ensuring a holistic approach to the well-being of our citizens from their homes and, yes, to their health. Mr. Speaker, dead men do not talk. But through this bill, amending the Criminal Evidence Act, witnesses will be able to do so for them without fear for themselves or their families. As a government, our job must then be to ensure that in them coming forward, we dot all of our I's and cross our T's, because it really could mean the difference between life and death. Mr. Speaker, West Grand Bahama and Bimini supports this bill and will pray for its positive outcome at all levels.
As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is indeed a privilege to rise in representation of the wonderful people of Elizabeth as we debate an amendment to one of the most necessary bills that was introduced in a compendium of bills in 2011. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member for South Beach said that snitches get stitches. I would align myself more with the words of West Grand Bahama and Bimini, who would have said that dead men tell no tales. Mr. Speaker, the people of the Bahamas look at the members in this place, and they sometimes assume that we breathe a different air. When we make decisions or we say things that seem out of touch with what they perceive to be the reality of life in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I would like to tell a story, and then I would like to explain that story. I was a young surgeon at one point in my career, and I can recall getting a telephone call in March of 1999. I went to the Princess Margaret Hospital, and there was a police officer named Jimmy Ambrose who had been shot multiple times. He and his partner, Martian Scott, were shot outside of a nightclub, and it started a saga that rolled through our court system for years. Mr. Speaker, Martian Scott, a young police officer, retired from the Royal Bahamas Police Force after giving evidence in that trial. Martian Scott was murdered in 2006. Ultimately, the alleged perpetrators were finally brought to justice and were convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment in 2013. Mr. Speaker, when Jimmy Ambrose came into the hospital, he had been shot multiple times. We took him to the operating room and we tried to control his bleeding. At the end of the day, he had lost so much blood, had been given so much blood, plasma, platelets, IV fluid, that we could not get his bowels back in his belly. We had to pack his bellies in a plastic bag. Jimmy Ambrose died, Mr. Speaker, as did 126 other people in 2011. 111 people were murdered in the Bahamas in 2012, 119 in 2013, 123 in 2014, and I can go on and on and on. In response to the record murder rate, the administration of the time introduced a compendium of bills intended to take a draconian approach to the increasing amount of heinous crimes, one of them being murder. And when we introduced the Criminal Evidence or Witness Anonymity Bill, we made it very clear that we understood that the ability of a defendant to not see his or her accuser could be thought to be a violation of that individual's rights. But, Mr. Speaker, the question is, whose rights are we trying to protect? And does everybody have a right to be protected? By 2012, there was a new administration in place. On June the 5th, 2012, the Tribune reports a contribution given in the honorable place, that other place, given by the junior Minister of National Security, the Honorable Keith Bell, when he said that 25 Bahamian witnesses had been murdered between 2007 and 2012. I have no reason to doubt the veracity of his comments, Mr. Speaker. But if we have 25 Bahamians murdered, and they were known to be witnesses in trials, ought they not be entitled to some type of protection? The then Minister of State for National Security was on a good wicket until he said that the reason for these murders was the F&M government. Comments continued in this place by my predecessor, the Honorable Member for Elizabeth, and the Honorable Member for Fox Hill, who took exceptions to the anonymity bill. Mr. Speaker, the people of the Bahamas are tired of the violence. They are tired of the crime, and they want us to do something about it. And so when we find that there are, in the space from 1973 to 2018, more than 2,000 murders, and the Bahamian people are demanding the restoration of capital punishment, the truth of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, that there have only been 13 executions in a sovereign, independent Bahamas. When Slobeck was hanged in 1976, he was #1, and when David Mitchell was hanged in 2000, he was #13. You do the arithmetic on the back of a napkin, that works out to 13 divided by 2,000, and that is about 0.65% of murderers who were hanged in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I don't need any more polls. I don't need any more referenda to know that the Bahamian people are not happy with what is happening with these criminals being brought to justice. The problem is, Mr. Speaker, that the criminals know dead men tell no tales. And so, if I can get bail, all I need to do is take out the witness, as they have done repeatedly over the years. I once again quote the junior minister of National Security, then Senator Keith Bell, who said that 25 witnesses were murdered between 2007 and 2012. Obviously, this spate of murdering has not stopped, Mr. Speaker, and we continue to see witnesses gunned down. The poet John Donne asks in his poem, or says, that any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind. Therefore, never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Mr. Speaker, people want to know, what is the interconnectedness of all of this? Crime is not a police problem. Crime is not only a judicial problem. Crime is not only a legislator's problem. Crime is not only a problem for the executive. Crime is a problem for all of us. Mr. Speaker, I would have pointed out the fact that when people go to my emergency room at Princess Margaret Hospital, they are often left waiting. And one of the reasons why they are often left waiting is because the Bahamas happens to have more gunshot wounds per capita than virtually every other country in the world. Wow. So, Mr. Speaker, when we look at the list of countries with homicides, these are the successful gunshot wounds: Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela, Lesotho, Jamaica, Belize, St. Kitts, South Africa, Guatemala are the only countries that are more violent than we are. And so when you look at the number of people that die from gunshot wounds, it doesn't talk about the number of people that don't die. And when you realize that between 250 and 300 Bahamians are shot in this country every year, it means that that emergency room is overrun with victims of trauma. It means that oftentimes the hardworking EMS personnel, the nurses, and the doctors are overwhelmed dealing with the violence. It means that the blood bank is empty because of the violence. It means that the intensive care unit cannot accommodate your mother or your father because of the violence. Mr. Speaker, we are all connected, and when we talk about a considered, committed, consensus approach to the management of crime, no right-thinking Bahamian would want a witness who is willing to put their life and limb in jeopardy to give evidence against an accused, to not only fear for their life, but to lose their life as a result. Who is going to take care of their families afterwards, Mr. Speaker? Who is going to take care of their children afterwards, Mr. Speaker? What are we going to say? Oops, we're sorry? Well, you know, you didn't make it, but he was a good man. He stood for justice. Mr. Speaker, the member for Southern Shores and the member, my representative for St. Anne's, would have pointed out the challenge of witness protection. Where are we going to protect these individuals? They can't go to Rumkey. They can't go to Ragged Island. They can't go to Exuma. They certainly can't go to Engliston. Are we going to send them to Long Island? Mr. Speaker, this amendment is very simple. What it says is that we believe, and we wish to enshrine in law, that there are peculiar circumstances, murder, manslaughter, rape, armed robbery, dangerous drugs trafficking, terrorist events, trafficking in persons, where there ought to be some protection for the brave soul who is willing to say, I saw so-and-so do such and such. We are suggesting in this legislation, Mr. Speaker, that yes, the magistrate or the justice ought to see the witness, either in real time or virtually. But given the reality of life in the Bahamas, that dead men tell no tales, and the fact that witnesses have been repeatedly murdered in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, if we wish to maintain a judicial system, then we need to ensure that we protect the witnesses. Now, as I get ready to conclude, Mr. Speaker, I want to refer to a speech given by Sir Hartman Longley on the 13th of January, 2016, when he noted, I believe this was at the beginning of the judicial year, and I quote, "The thousands of people charged with criminal offenses in the magistrate court are on the loose, with very little chance of them ever being brought to trial." You combine that, Mr. Speaker, with a number of trials that have been delayed, a number of trials that have been nollied, a number of trials that cannot be continued, and given the backlog of capital matters before the court, Mr. Speaker, the likelihood that a murder trial for somebody who commits a murder in 2017 will get to the courts before 2021, 2022, in the words of the Chief Justice, the then Chief Justice, is very low. And so, as a matter of natural justice, we give these people bail, and they can take care of the witnesses. As they do. And that, Mr. Speaker, is why no right-thinking legislator ought to disagree with this amendment to the anonymity bill. Mr. Speaker, we need to be aware of the concerns of the people that we are privileged to represent. We need to be in touch with how they feel. We need to know that it takes an awful lot of courage to go up against people with power and money. It takes an even greater level of courage when those people are armed with guns and they have henchmen who can snuff you out or take out your family. Mr. Speaker, this is not about some theoretical need or concern. This is due to the fact that the Bahamas has a murder rate which is 15 times higher than that in the United Kingdom, 6 times higher than it is in the United States, and again, one of the most violent countries in the world. Now, this is real talk. And in order to solve problems, the first thing you have to do is you got to claim it.
Yeah, you know, we're talking down the country, so, you know.
Yeah, I know. They'll say that we're talking down the country. But the truth will set you free. And so, Mr. Speaker, Elizabeth stands here today in absolute, utter support. And it is my privilege to conclude this debate on behalf of the government of the Bahamas. We would like to reassure the Bahamian people that we feel your pain. We understand what it is that you want, to live in a peaceful country where you can express freely the desires of your heart to take care of your family, your loved ones, and to flourish in this wonderful country. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
As many? As many? Yes. Yeah. I got it. It has been moved and seconded that that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Criminal Evidence Witness and Anonymity Act 2011. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will rise. Just before I order that the bill be read a second time, let me just say that I am encouraged today by the Parliament of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas in that it is clear from both sides that the intention of this Parliament is not to deprive and accuse of its constitutional rights, but rather to protect the witnesses in our criminal justice system. And having practiced criminal law myself, I can tell you that on many occasions, I've seen circumstances where witnesses, as well as jurors, are trying to find every possible reason and excuse not to appear before the courts for fear of their life. And I think all of us today are witnesses of the dilemma of the law, in that while you may pass legislation that may be great for justice and humanity, it may be a shield in that respect. It can also lend itself to be used as a sword. And so, while the law doesn't exist to promote injustice, we have witnessed here today, I believe, a great step in the right direction in the Parliament of the Bahamas, where members from both sides can see, when you weigh in the balance, the need to protect those persons who would be prepared to come forward to ensure that our criminal justice system works the way it should work. And now, with that, I will order that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Criminal Evidence Witness Anonymity Act.
For the second reading of bills, Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, there are no more second readings of bills. Mr. Speaker, I do move at this time that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole, with the Deputy Speaker in the chair.
It has been moved. It has been moved and seconded that the House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House, with the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the whole House in the chair. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will rise. The Deputy Speaker will now take the chair.
Which one?
Committee of the Whole, as many. Chair recognizes the member for Bambo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the long title of the bill for criminal evidence witness anonymity amendment bill 2018, that the long title be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many members are in favor, to remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The long title is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I do now move that the short title be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many that are in favor to remain seated, those opposing will rise. The short title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I do now move that the bill in its entirety be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. It's agreed that the bill in its entirety be agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the long title of a bill for an act to consolidate and strengthen measures to recover the proceeds and instrumentalities of crime and to combat identified risk, that the long title be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor to remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the short title and commencement be agreed.
Yeah.
Same bill. It's been moved and seconded that the short title and commencement of the bill be agreed. As many members are in favor to remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The short title and commencement is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clause 2 be agreed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that clause 2 of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor, the chair recognizes the member for St. Anne's.
Speaker, Mr. Chairman, sorry. I move that an amendment to be made in clause 2, inserted the following definition in the appropriate alphabetical order, and that is politically exposed person means an individual who is or has been entrusted, A, with a domestic prominent public function, inclusive head of state or government, legislator, politician, senior government, judicial or military official, senior executive of state-owned corporation, or important political party official. B, with a prominent public function by a foreign jurisdiction, inclusive of a head of state or government, legislator, senior politician, senior government, judicial or military official, senior executive of a state-owned corporation, or senior political party official. And C, with a senior position at an international organization or branch thereof, domestic or foreign, and includes a family member or close associate of a politically exposed person.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill be amended. Clause 2 be amended. As many as in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The bill is amended. It's agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I now move that clauses 3 through 5 be agreed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that clause 3 through 5 be agreed. As many members are in favor to remain seated, those opposing will rise. Clause 3 through 5 is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clause 6 be agreed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that clause 6 be agreed. As many members are in favor, remain. The chair recognizes the member for
Thank you,
St.
Mr. Chairman. In clause 6, I propose an amendment to delete subclause 3 and substitute as follows. 3, the IRF steering committee shall A, coordinate a national risk assessment periodically to identify, assess, and understand the identified risks and ensure that such amendments are updated and relevant. B, maintain surveillance of FATF pronouncements regarding country risk application of enhanced due diligence. C, have regard of reports by financial institutions and designated non-financial business professions of persistent regulatory failures by a jurisdiction or foreign financial institution, and to prepare lists of such jurisdictions or foreign financial institutions. D, advise financial institutions of obligations to apply enhanced due diligence to transactions emanating from jurisdictions or foreign financial institutions named by the RAF Steering Committee and the FATF. C, coordinate the development, regular review, and implementation of national policies and activities designed to mitigate identified risks. F, collect and analyze statistics and other information from competent authorities to assess the effectiveness of the IRF. G, coordinate measures to identify, assess, and understand the impact of parts 4, 5, and 6 of this Act. H, report to the Ministerial Council. And G, establish appropriate mechanisms to provide information on identified risks to relevant financial institutions, self-regulatory bodies, and professional associations.
Been moved and seconded that the clause be amended. It's read. Many are in favor remain, but many members are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The amendment is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clauses 7 through 74 be agreed.
Second.
Being moved and seconded that clause 7 through 74 be agreed. Many members are in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 7 through 74 is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clause 75 be agreed.
Second.
It's being moved and seconded that clause 75 be agreed. The chair recognizes the member for
Thank you,
St.
Mr. Chairman. In clause 75, I propose the following amendment. A, subclause 5B, delete the word respondents and substitute relevant persons. And B, in subclause 6, delete the words under section 61, little brackets 1.
It's been moved and seconded that clause 75 be amended as read. The seconder for that amendment? Need a second. It's been moved and seconded that clause 75 of the bill be amended as read. As many members are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 75 is amended as agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clause 76 be agreed.
Second.
Being moved and seconded that clause 76 be agreed. The chair recognizes the member for
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I propose the following amendment in clause 76. A, subclause 1B, delete the words 77 subclause 3 and substitute the words 77 subclause 5. And 75 subclause 5. And B, delete subclause 2 and renumber the subclause 3 as subclause 2.
Seconder? Seconder to the amendment. It's been moved and seconded that clause 76 be amended as read. As many members in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 76 as amended is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clause 77 be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that clause 77 be agreed. As many members.
Sorry, Mr. Chief.
The chair recognizes the member
Thank
for
you, Mr.
St.
Chairman. We're trying to get subclause 77. I I propose the following amendment. In subclause 5, delete the words respondent and substitute the words relevant person.
Seconded. It's been moved and seconded that clause 77 be amended as read. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 77 as amended is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clause 78 be agreed.
I got it.
Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder for, it's being moved and seconded that clause 78 be agreed?
Might take over the AG.
The chair recognizes the member for St. Anne's.
Mr. Chairman, clause 78, I propose the following amendment. A, subclause 2, delete the word respondent and substitute the words relevant person. B, under subclause 2B, delete the words respondents and substitute the words relevant persons. And in C, subclause 4, delete the words respondents and respondent and substitute the words relevant persons and relevant person, respectively.
Second. It's being moved and seconded that clause 78 be amended as read. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 78 as amended is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clause 79 be agreed.
Second. It's being moved and seconded that clause 79 be agreed. As many members that are in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 79 is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do move that clause 80 be agreed.
Second.
It's being moved.
Sorry.
It's been moved and seconded that clause 80 be agreed. As many. Chair recognizes member St. Anne's.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. In clause 80, I propose the following amendment. A, in subclause 1, little 1, insert after the word order the word absolute, and 2, delete the word respondent and substitute the words relevant person, and in B, subclause 4, delete the word respondent and substitute the words relevant person.
Second. It's being moved and seconded that clause 80 be amended as read. As many members are in favor, will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 80 is amended as agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clauses 81 through 86 be agreed.
Second.
It's being moved and seconded that clause 81 through 86 be agreed. As many members are in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 81 through 86 is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clause 87 be agreed.
Second.
It's being moved and seconded that clause 87 be agreed. The chair recognizes the member for St. Anne's.
Mr. Chairman, I move an amendment to clause 87. In subclause 2, insert immediately after the words such document the words either at a time specified in the order or at once.
Second. It's being moved and seconded that clause 87 be agreed as amended. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 87 as amended is agreed.
I'm in awe.
Mr.
Chair
Chairman,
recognizes.
Yes, I'm in awe. Being tested on
I move that the first schedule be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that first schedule of the bill be agreed. The chair recognizes the member for St. Anne's.
Excuse me.
Yeah, the rest of the bill. Sorry.
No, I was going to have the bill in its entirety after.
No.
that.
You gotta
Do 87 to the end.
Yes.
Okay.
87 to
The chair recognizes the member.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I do now move that clauses 89,
88, 88,
89,
88,
89 to 90,
88. We just did 87.
yeah, 88 to 98 be agreed.
Second.
It's being moved and seconded that clause 88 to 98 be agreed. As many members are in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 88 through 98 8 is agreed.
Mr.
Chair
Chairman, I
recognizes
do now
Dr.
move that the first schedule be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that the first schedule be agreed. The chair recognizes the member for St. Anne's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the last amendment for the day. In the first schedule, I propose the following amendment. A, in paragraph 3, delete the words Chapter 107 and substitute the words Act 2018. B, insert immediately after paragraph 4 the new paragraphs as follows. 5, an offense under sections 109 to 120 of the Securities Industry Act 2011, number 10 of 2011. B, an offense under the Environmental Planning and Protection Act 28. Sorry? 6. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. 6, an offense under the Environmental Planning and Protection Act 2018. And 7, an offense under sections 63 to 68 of the Trademarks Act 2015, number 39 of 2015. 8, an offense under sections 77 to 81 of the Patents Act 2015, number 40 of 2015. And 9, an offense under section 63 of the Penal Code Act, Chapter 84. And C, as a result of those amendments, renumber the existing paragraphs 5 as 10. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the first schedule be amended as read. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The first schedule is amended as agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the second schedule be agreed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the second schedule of the bill be agreed. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The second schedule of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I do now move that the third schedule be agreed.
Second.
It's being moved and seconded that the third schedule of the bill be agreed. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The third schedule of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the bill in its entirety as amended be agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I second that.
It's being moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety as amended be agreed. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. It's agreed that the bill be agreed in its entirety as amended.
Cheers.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the Speaker take the chair.
Being moved and second.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded that the Speaker now do take the chair. As many as in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Speaker will now take the chair.
We're doing quite well with boss today.
I beg leave to report, Mr. Speaker, that the committee, the whole, has gone through the bills, having made amendments thereto.
Sound like the door's still open for you. I thought it was only eczema. Oh, you're before eczema. You're a senior. Transition.
Honorable members, the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the whole House has reported that the House in committee has gone through the bill, having made amendment thereto. Third reading and passing of bills.
Mr. Speaker, I do move that third reading of a bill for an act to consolidate and strengthen measures to recover the proceeds and instrumentalities of crime and to combat identified risk be read a third time and passed.
I second that, Mr. Speaker.
My copy is disappeared. Okay. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and pass. A bill for an act to consolidate and strengthen measures to recover the proceeds and instrumentalities of crime and to combat identified risks. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will rise. Order that the bill be read a third time.
A bill for an act to consolidate and strengthen measures to recover the proceeds and instrumentalities of crime and to combat identified risks.
Order that the bill do now pass and the title thereof be declared to be the Proceeds of Crime Bill 2018. For the third readings of bills, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to repeal and replace the Financial Transaction Reporting Act and for matters connected thereto.
Second. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and pass. A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Financial Transaction Reporting Act and for matters connected thereto. Order, as many as in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will rise. Order that the bill be read a third time and pass.
A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Financial Transaction Reporting Act and for matters connected thereto.
Order that the bill now pass and the title thereof be the Financial Transaction Reporting Act 2018. For the third reading and passing of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to amend the Criminal Evidence Witness Anonymity Act.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and pass. A bill for an act to amend the Criminal Evidence Witness Anonymity Act 2011. That is the Act, 2011 Act.
No. A bill for an act to amend the Criminal Evidence Witness Anonymity Act.
Order that the bill do now pass and the title thereof be declared to be a bill, the Criminal Evidence Witness Anonymity Amendment Act 2018. For the third reading and passing of bills.
Mr. Speaker, there are no more third reading and passing.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. We had spoken earlier with the opposition because we would like to go back on the agenda, Mr. Speaker, so that the Minister of Tourism can lay the white paper for aviation And so we'd like to go back on the agenda to the laying of documents with the consent of the entire House, the consent of the opposition.
No objection. Thank you. Thank you. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Freetown.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Ain't long, man. Relax yourself. I don't talk long. No, I got a little, I got to say something. This is my time now. I ain't talking on the other bill. I'm talking on this one. Mr. Speaker, I rise in this honorable parliament to lay the Bahamas National Aviation Policy White Paper. This document here. Mr. Speaker, barely 2 short years after independence, the Bahamas became party to the Geneva Convention on the 27th of May, 1975, and thereby became one of the 191 member states of the International Civil Aviation Organization. As a signatory of the Geneva Convention, the Bahamas was and is obligated to comply with ICAO's standards and recommended practices. Mr. Speaker, those standards initially required the Bahamas to comply and upgrade its aviation standards and procedures from ICAO's Annex 1, 6, and 8 to incorporate all of the 19 existing annexes. This became necessary because of a decision taken during the 35th session of the ICAO Assembly in 2004. The Assembly Resolution A35-6 called for the transition of the program, non-compulsory, to a comprehensive compulsory systems approach for the conduct of safety oversight audits and expanded the scope to include safety-related provisions of all safety-related annexes to the convention. Another major decision imposed on the states, Mr. Speaker, was the requirement to comply with ICAO's 8 critical elements of the safety oversight standards. Those critical elements are essentially the safety defense tools of a safety oversight system and are required for the effective implementation of safety-related policy and associated procedures. The 8 critical elements of the safety oversight system are: 1, primary aviation legislation; 2, specific operating regulations; 3, state civil aviation system and safety oversight function; 4, technical personnel qualification and training; 5, technical guidance, tools, and the provision of safety critical information; 6, licensing, certification, authorization, and approval obligations; 7, surveillance obligations; and 8, resolution of safety concerns. In November 2011, the Minister of Tourism and Aviation announced the government's intention to address the demands of ICAO and the industry through a white paper. Shortly thereafter, the government entered into a $50 million loan agreement with the Inter-American Development Bank to acquire security screening equipment for select Family Island airports, purchase a new air traffic surveillance radar for the Nassau International Airport, and to reform the air transport sector. A prerequisite for the loan was the development of a national aviation policy white paper, and for the Cabinet to agree to the policy initiatives outlined in the paper. The document, the white paper, is divided into 3 sections: a review of the institutional framework, an analysis of the air transport infrastructure, and a market outlook. The review of the institutional framework revealed that there was a high degree of concentration of functions in the Civil Aviation Department, as it was known then, which was responsible for policymaking, technical regulation, air navigation services, Family Island airport operations, and aircraft accidents/incident investigation. The white paper, in consideration of the existing arrangements, recommended that the functions of the Civil Aviation Department be separated into 4 separate entities. The regulatory body, which is now known as the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority. Airport operations, which is now run by the Airport Authority, and the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Division, which handles air traffic control. Airport security, and Air Accident Incident Investigation Department. The paper also recommended that the government promote private sector participation in the development of the aviation infrastructure. The government subsequently embarked on a series of institutional, legal, and policy initiatives that reflect an overhaul of the existing air sector policy. These changes reflected the need to modernize sector policies and institutional arrangements to accommodate private sector participation in airport infrastructure, financing, and management, and to meet its obligations as a member state of ICAO. The mission for civil aviation is, and I quote, to promote a safe, secure, competitive, customer-driven air transport sector, ensuring an orderly and rapid growth of air transport to support the social and economic development of the Bahamas through the encouragement of tourism and local connectivity. Additionally, the IDB also imposed conditions for the release of the second tranche, which is approximately $32.5 million, and that's the reason for me laying this. And those conditions were, one, that the white paper must be approved by the Parliament and published. Two, that the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority be created and become operational for at least 3 months with responsibility over technical regulation of the aviation sector and ability to charge for its services. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, the BCAA has been in operation since October 2016. 3, the Airport Authority be assigned the responsibility to operate and develop all government-owned airports, which it has been. 4, that the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Division be assigned the responsibility to manage air traffic control operations in the Bahamas controlled airspace. The Bahamas Air Navigation Services Division has also been in operation since October 2016. And 5, establishment by the Cabinet of a unit and procedures for the independent investigation of aircraft accidents and/or incidents under Bahamian jurisdiction and within the Bahamas controlled airspace. The major outstanding trigger for the release of the second tranche, the $32.5 million, is the laying of the Bahamas Aviation Policy White Paper in Parliament and Parliament's subsequent approval of the same. So, Mr. Speaker, much of the work has been done that has been outlaid in this white paper. We've established the Civil Aviation Authority, which is responsible for safety and oversight. The Airport Authority has been set up and is operational and is responsible for the 28 Family Island airports. The air traffic control system has been put into the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Division and is operational. And, hold on, let me finish. And the airline AAID, what's that stand for again? The investigation department has been set up and is now investigating Air Accident Investigation Department. There we go. Thank you so much, Engliston. I knew you would come to my rescue as I lay out much of what you have done. So I know you wanted me to say that. Much of this work has been done. It's just an event happened in May of last year that prevented the former Minister of Aviation from laying this paper. So I'm happy to finish what you started, and to release this $32.5 million that the IDB is waiting for us to do. And one of the conditions in order for us to get that money is to lay this white paper in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, since the development of the white paper, successive administrations have adhered to the policy initiatives outlined in the paper and has consistently pursued the path to bring these policies to fruition. This administration is no different. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I lay the Bahamas National Aviation Policy White Paper on the table for Parliament.
Order that the document will lie on the table.
No, I get the... Oh, the date? Mr. Speaker, before I sit down, I would also like to extend best wishes to the
Just
my
a moment,
oh.
honorable member.
Oh, yeah.
Order that the document do lie on the table. You may
Sorry.
proceed.
Before I sit down, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to extend my best wishes to the wonderful people of Freetown. We have been very active in the constituency. I'm happy to say that employment opportunities are becoming available. The economy is turning. I went to my office the other day, and I was happy to learn from my manager of my office. She said, man, plenty jobs out there. Everybody who want a job can find one. So we are making headway. One of the wonderful programs that we have in Freetown, one of the wonderful programs that we have in Freetown is the ability to prepare your resume, help you apply online. We're teaching the people to fish, not bringing the fish to the people. So I'm very proud of that program, and I'm very happy to see that it's bearing positive results. And we're having many meetings. People are coming to me, accessing me, and I think the constituency is moving forward and in conjunction with the rest of the economy. So I'm very happy to report that things are improving in Freetown, and I encourage my constituents to continue to access me at my many times of office hours and to see where I can help. It's a very expensive undertaking, I hasten to add, Mr. Speaker, and hopefully we can change that dynamic, but I'm having fun, and I think things are going well. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Further laying of documents by ministers while we are at that position? None? Okay. Consideration of Senate amendments? Resolutions? Member statement? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I'd like to commend the members opposite today, headed by the member for St. Anne's. They did well today, and I would just take note of the report another time. I'll leave it like that today. Thank you, Mike. So, I must say, Mr. Speaker, in life there is death, and our presence was most graced by the presence of my colleague, the member for Angliston, and our father, the author of the Behamonization Policy for our Commonwealth, the Honorable Lady Hannah, and the family of the homegoing for the late Sister Cedar Ferguson on Saturday past. One who would have given much to the Church of God in the Bahamas, including the Turks and Caicos Islands. And to have her, along with Sir Franklin, her son, former world boxing champion, Mr. Elijah Obed, also photojournalist, Franklin Ferguson, and also Dr. Rollington Ferguson, along with Naomi and Ruth and the entire family, to have Bishop Moses Johnson and the Church of God family there for that great send-off, for one of those who would have built the Christian faith in this society. And also she accepted the encomium of a jumper with great civility and with pride, one who served her God until the very end. So today, may her soul and the souls of all the faithfully departed. And I was glad to see the staff of the House of Assembly. I saw you afterwards. So David Forbes and Asheron and others were also there, who would have also joined us at the cathedral, the oldest Pentecostal church in the Bahamas on East Street and Lily in the Valley Corner. Please don't forget it. Thank you very kindly. Mr. Speaker, also talking about the Church of God by extension, the Highway Church of God is going to be installing its bishop-elect on Friday at Bahama, and I plan to be there because I plan to be in Mangrove Key tomorrow morning and on to South on Friday. Lord tarries, as we say in the church community. And Bishop Denzel Roll, a young man who many would know from his singing and also his artistry in that arena more directly. But this is a very special moment for him and his family, so we join him in prayers and want to say congratulations to him and wish him the very best in his ministry also. Mr. Speaker, to community concerns, I mentioned Mangrove Key tomorrow. I would be there tomorrow with Administrator Francis Hebner and Simonet and the local government council. I would want my people in Mangrove Key to know that I know their concern, especially of the clinic and its development. I would see it tomorrow morning firsthand for myself, and also the placement of a medical doctor in South Andros and Mangrove Key is a major concern. Mr. Speaker, no matter what you say, it takes me 14 minutes by plane to get into Mangrove Key, Andros from here, just across here. Fresh Creek is just this way, south is further. And to still not have a medical doctor in that community when we sat in this parliament, when the now Prime Minister was a part of that process, and the former member for Sandwell would have been the sitting Prime Minister, that virtually led to much being said across the floor for Bahamian doctors to be hired by the public service to go to the Family Islands and still be facing this challenge today is one that concerns me. I never forget that day sitting right in this parliament in that seat back there at that time. Never forgot it. So, Mr. Speaker, we are challenged, and we are glad to have a doctor in the Central Andros community, but for our people in the island where we don't have ATM machines in South nor Mangrove Key where persons can access funding to ask for emergency flights at night, Mr. Speaker, is a concern for my people. We'll also be looking at a site for those who are definitely viewing in that district for the placement of a library also in Mangrove Key. Like we've had the opening of the library in the South Andros district, and also at the playing field development there. These are some of the things we'll be looking at. And, you know, I must note especially the concern, Mr. Speaker, one of the leading citizens in Mangrove Key, Mr. David Wallace, who has his own asthmatic challenges. That's a major concern because my grandmother had asthma. And my mom used to have also what we call this space of shortness of breath, they call it. And I remember many days, I think they had an old thing called this pump she used to have sometime in a bag. And whatever that thing was called, and she had to use that. She started to use this pump. If she got, the place was too hot or something happened and she got exasperated by some undertaking. So, Mr. Speaker, to have persons like Mr. Wallace and Mangrove Key asking about it because they are concerned. That's why I'm driven by this concern daily about having medical doctors in these communities, in these family islands. For the community of South Andros, I had a discussion. I would let them know as they are listening, especially by radio, with the chairman today, the fine member for Long Island, my friend, as we're looking at getting the water process now, having the reverse osmosis process set up as soon as possible. He, along with the member for Carmichael, who's been most helpful in this regard, because without that, homecoming is coming up once again. Our big basketball tournament is normally in October when we welcome some 20-plus teams to South Andros. And I made a commitment to them a year or two ago that we will soon have the day in South Andros, the place where I was born and bred with my grandparents, where we'll be able to have the same facilities for the most part in South, Central, and Mangrove Key as those students would have in New Providence. And so therefore, I am glad, and I commend the member for Carmichael, who's offered his assistance to see us through this process with assistance through his ministry, so that those students who attend the high school in South Andros, Central, and Mangrove Key would be opened to those same opportunities like those students here in New Providence. Thank you very kindly. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, sorry, I must also note that it is good news for the people of South Andros in particular, that is the most challenged in this dichotomized community, where we are now hearing about the closure of the deal for the Emerald Palm Hotel in South Andros. We're still waiting to see what happens to the lighthouse in Central. I was in Central there over the weekend, did a little fishing with the administrator there the other night. And so therefore, it's good news for the challenged community of my hometown that we're now seeing some closure. So there's some light on the horizon for the community of South Andros. Local government, Mr. Speaker, I know we don't beat to the big budget, but local government and this financing and funding is a big concern. I know we're talking about local government for New Providence, but family island communities are challenged, Mr. Speaker, especially if you have one such as mine where the local practitioners want to assist those persons who are facing tough times. And so instead of giving someone I call a hand down, you want to give them a hand out by giving them a little job. And local government has done this in most family island districts. And they've gone above and beyond and sometimes what we call hiring persons. And so, Mr. Speaker, I asked the government of the day, like I asked my own government, to try to see how best we can ameliorate this situation because they are challenged. And sometimes they have to decide whether they can pay for the garbage collection or pay for those persons who they have on these one-year or monthly contracts. So I ask for further consideration in that regard. Mr. Speaker, finally, for the Central Andros District, the banking issue is still a big one there. I want to thank the National Workers Cooperative Credit Union, Mr. Alfred Portier and those for setting in that community. But this is a community that generates over $9 to $11 million annually, Central Andros. Pretty productive community. And now to have the Royal Bank left that community of Central Andros leaves a major void in that community, but there's quite a bit of cash, and people are exposed. And to have persons, older persons who I saw just the other morning coming up, have to come to New Providence to the Royal Bank. Their branch is now the main branch here in New Providence. That's dislocation for our people, man. I'm an island boy, Mr. Speaker. I understand the life. Persons took time out, open account, the banks are closed. So I know everything must be looked at. The government has a fiduciary responsibility to Bahamian taxpayers. You got to account for the money. I understand all of that. But at the end of the day, we are all still a part of this great Commonwealth. So I'm asking the government of the people to please consider, throw what means possible. Looking at, we've asked for the Bank of the Bahamas. We're asking other banking agencies to also look at the community of Central Andros in particular, so that we can have this void filled. But I also want to thank the credit union that we can also, if they are going to be the ones who are going to lead this process, that we can see some fulfillment quickly in this development for the community of Central Andros. Mr. Speaker, with that I want to say thank you for your listening as we look forward to better days, when we can have these kind of calm days in Parliament. It makes me feel good. One who's been around for a little while, you know? When I can sit back and see the member for Bamboo Town today doing his thing, so that he did listen to the hometown boy over the years. God is a good God. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Further member statement?
Mr. Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Elizabeth.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't want to interrupt the honourable member from Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros, but he made a few comments that I thought would beg some clarification from my portfolio as Minister of Health. The member would be aware that there was indeed a physician deployed in Mangrove Key, that a family member suffered a very serious medical emergency, and that doctor had to be removed from the community. We are actively seeking a replacement, and I can assure the member that the concerns of not only himself but his community are held with the highest priority. And we hope to be able to resolve that matter as quickly as possible. This was an unforeseen emergency, and I'm sure that you understand the challenge of that physician and his family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Tall Pines.
I'll yield to the senior member.
The chair recognizes...
Speaker, I'll be very brief. I'll be very short. Mr. Speaker, I just want to remind all members that member statements is typically 30 minutes. I know since we, for the whole time, I have been a little bit laxed in allowing members to be able to speak beyond that time, but we are going to enforce the rules going forward. So member statements is 30 minutes. We have about 19 left, so I want all members to be cognizant of that, that you would make your statements succinct so that you can give other members an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was about to make the same sentiments through you, Mr. Speaker, reminding the members of Rule 45 with regards to 5 minutes for statement, 30 minutes in total. Mr. Speaker, I'll be very brief. With regards, I want to speak to the constituents of Tall Pines who have raised some concerns. Speaker, we've always been one that's been asking the Ministry of Environment to take precautions with regards to the easement between the landfill and public and constituent homes in Jubilee Gardens. Some persons would have heard tractors running between the landfill and their homes. I want to just give them the information that that isn't a new company coming in to take over the landfill. So people thought that they heard the tractors. That was simply us, Mr. Speaker, moving on their request to have that easement or have an area of land cleared up between the landfill and their homes. So I just moved to have that done. I want to ease that panic for the persons in Jubilee Gardens. So that process should be completed within the next day or two, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I just want to also remind my members in Tall Pines that we will be having a meeting tomorrow on backyard farming at Galvantine's Primary School at 7 o'clock. We're inviting them to participate in that. And I'm pleased to say, Mr. Speaker, that one of the campaign promises that I would have made and my team would have made in Tall Pines is that we would ensure that a community center is open and functional in Tall Pines. I'm pleased to announce in this honorable house that while our community center was open for several months now, I'm pleased to say that we now have organized programs, a computer center, a homework center that would begin in earnest on next week, Monday. So, Mr. Speaker, we're delivering on our promises, Speaker, so I want to invite my members in Tall Pines to visit our headquarters. Call the community center at 601-5438 to get further information. And to our constituents in Wellington Road, Christie Avenue, and Ernest Avenue, in the Stapleton area, Tall Pines, that your member of Parliament will be there this weekend visiting you and hearing your concerns. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will make other reports on the next hearing. I'm yielding to my good member for Bamboo Town and his time restraints. Or the rules time restraints, Mr. Speaker.
Further member statement. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill.
Sorry, Bimini and West End, I guess it's, I'm just fast from track days. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish Reverend Warren Anderson and the members and congregation of Moncari Union Baptist Church, the Beacon on the Hill, a happy 175th anniversary, which they will be celebrating on Sunday at the church. Moncari has been a mainstay in Fox Hill and has given to Fox Hill and to the country many citizens that have done so well by this country. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, since coming to office in May of last year, the community of West Grand Bahama and Bimini would have experienced many losses by way of death. A lot of families have been impacted. I am here, Mr. Speaker, to convey to all of my constituents and to the families of those that we have lost my deepest sympathy for their loss. I know oftentimes as members of Parliament, what has become expected of us is that we attend many funerals, and obviously we cannot be in all of these places at one time. But that is not to say that all of my constituents and those that would have lost family members are not in my prayers. I wish to convey generally to all of those who would have lost family members my sympathy. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, we wish to continue also to celebrate life, in that we are so focused on our young people and ensuring that they have a better Bahamas. Just recently, I started again an initiative of reading to students in the primary school, something that I would have done for many years prior coming into the political arena, Bimini Primary being the first since we would have been elected, and we will continue to do that. But I'm here to encourage also constituents to keep on keeping on, knowing that we are working on your behalf, and no matter what it seems like, we are here to ensure that you live your best lives. I take this opportunity, especially, I'm very proud to announce to the residents of Bimini in particular that we are keeping one of our promises and introducing a constituency office in that community, which will officially open on May 5th, and we look forward to working from that area on your behalf. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Baines and Grantstown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very briefly, I would just like to thank the wonderful people of Bain and Grantstown for continuing to work with me, as they've been able to put me in a seat to represent them and to bring their concerns and issues to the forefront. Mr. Speaker, over this past week and a half, we've been successful in launching the Bain and Grantstown Center for Academic Advancement and Enrichment. And in this center, Mr. Speaker, we've been able to partner with Cybertech Career Training College to be able to allow some 200 persons from the community to be able to go back to school to get extra training. Mr. Speaker, these individuals will be going through 4 courses, namely entrepreneurship and small business development, computer studies. I can't remember the next 2 offhand. But Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to make note and to thank those residents who have signed up to be a part of this program, Mr. Speaker. As of today, we have some 384 residents who have signed up to be a part of that program, which will begin on April 23rd, next week, Monday. So, Mr. Speaker, we are indeed making progress to empower the people of Bain and Grantstown, and I thank them for continuing to work along with me as we take our community to higher heights. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Golden Gates.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the good people of Golden Gates, and I thank them for giving me the opportunity to serve here in this honorable house. Mr. Speaker, the Golden Gates constituency office has been moved to number 62, St. Vincent Road. We were previously on St. Vincent Road, and we've returned there. And the numbers remain the same. The number is 361-4363. So constituents, the number remains the same, 361-4363. And we are there officially now. And within the week, we will have a proper professional sign posted at that location. And thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for St. Barnabas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As usual, I rise to my feet, Mr. Speaker. Grateful to the great people of the great constituency of St. Barnabas, and I thank Almighty God for giving me another day above ground in this beautiful country, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, that is the greatest country on earth that I always contend to be. Mr. Speaker, I just wish to apprise the constituents of St. Barnabas of 3 very important things going on in the St. Barnabas constituency. We have the after-school tutoring program that is going on in the constituency. We have some 30-plus students that are enrolled, and so we're asking parents to get in contact with the constituency office at 603-4200 if they have some interest in that particular program, as well to inform constituents that the minor roof repair program, Mr. Speaker, minor roof repair program, Mr. Speaker, is going on as we speak, and we encourage them again to contact the constituency office for details. Also, Mr. Speaker, not roof replacement, minor roof repair. Mr. Speaker, just wish to project that in the month of October, we are presently working on the first annual Edmund Moxie Cultural Week. And of course, everybody knows that Edmund Moxie was a cultural icon and somebody, quite frankly, who's not received the honor that he richly deserves. And we're going to do our best to honor him. And even then, Mr. Speaker, to the Moxie family, I say that won't be enough. But we will do our endeavor best to do what we can, Mr. Speaker. Also, Mr. Speaker, before I take my seat, in my capacity as the Executive Chairman of the Bahamas Public Parks and Beaches Authority, I wish to extend my apologies to the family of Canon Dudley Strawn. Prior to my appointment, a sign was posted on the Centerville Park, Mr. Speaker, which is on West Avenue in Centerville, and it has Centerville Park. But that park is actually named in honor of Canon Dudley Strawn, who was a Bahamian patriot and a man of unbelievable grace and contributed to the Anglican Church and the Bahamas. So I just want to apologize to his family. That is being rectified as we speak, and we indeed apologize for that oversight. But we're making sure that that is going to be corrected. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I first would like to give congratulations to several groups. One, of course, we have acknowledged in this place through their visit, the Bahamas water polo team that excelled in Carifta. Of course, the Bahamas swim team that repeated as champions in Carifta. I'd like to say congratulations to all the coaches, officials, parents, and especially the outstanding athletes who competed. A number of those athletes went on to the Commonwealth Games in Australia that I had the privilege of attending, and they did exceptionally well. And I want to congratulate the Bahamas Olympic Committee, the B3As, all of the coaches and officials, therapists, physiotherapists that traveled with the team. The team did exceptionally well in a number of disciplines. They competed in a number of areas they had never competed in before, inclusive of boxing, wrestling, cycling, table tennis, of course, swimming, and we excelled in track and field. While I acknowledge the entire team and the officials and coaches for the incredible work they did, forgive me, I'd just like to single out, before I take my seat, several persons. One, of course, being our gold medal winner, Shawnee Miller-Weibo, who won the 200 meters. She is, in our estimation, the new face of track and field internationally. Secondly, Jeffrey Gibson, who won the 400-meter hurdles, got a silver medal. Jamal Wilson, who got a silver medal as well. And of course, Donald Thomas was exceptional in that contest as well. And of course, the 400-man relay team that won silver, comprising of O.J. Ferguson, Teray Sweeting, Stephen Newbold, Alonzo Russell. Smith, thank you very much. Michael Matthew and Ramon Miller. And we'd like to congratulate all of the athletes who have done exceptionally well, the bodybuilding team who also traveled and excelled. Finally, I'd like to say to residents of Marco City, this weekend a series of meetings are being held, and so I would be moving through various polling divisions and holding meetings with constituents Friday and Saturday, and of course on Sunday afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable members, just a reminder that when you speak, the rules require that you speak from your position in future to all members. And of course, that is to prevent confusion, particularly with the television broadcasts, where a member may be standing and the name for that constituency is showing, and he's not really the representative for that constituency. Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Garden Hills.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to say farewell and bid farewell to one of the pillars of the Garden Hills constituency, and to extend condolences to the entire Tynes family of Garden Hills number 1. Mr. Tynes was a man, Mr. Speaker, with few words, but his household was filled with young men from Garden Hills, and they gathered there every single day for his wise counsel and advice. And so on behalf of the grateful persons in Garden Hills, we say to the entire family, God be with you as we lay Mr. Tynes to rest this Sunday.
Thank you, honorable member. Further member statement. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to rise to give condolence to the Rose family in the Michael constituency on the passing of Audrey Rose, who will be laid to rest on this coming Saturday. And I want them to know that our prayers are with them. And also, I just want to thank them for their support, and want them to know that in the midst of life there is death, and encourage them to continue to trust God during these trying times, and looking forward to be there with them at this funeral on this coming Saturday that will be held here in Nassau. And so to the Rose family, the Emmanuel families, the other family members. May her soul rest in peace, and those who have gone on before. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Further member statement? Chair recognizes the honorable member for North Andros and the Berry Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too would like to rise on behalf of the people of North Andros and the Berry Islands to bring condolences to a patriarch that passed away yesterday in Red Base, Mr. Stanza Russell. So I want to give condolences to the Evans and the Russell family. Also this morning we lost a matriarch in our family, Miss Alberto Burrows, our church family. And I would like to pay respect to her family and let them know that we're here for them, and we will definitely pray that God will strengthen them through this difficult time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Further member statement? Well, at this time, I'd just like to make a statement to the constituents of Nassau Village. To inform you, first of all, that we have launched our community farming project. And the committee has decided that as we clear the lots and the vacant land in Nassau Village, that opposed to permitting them to grow up again when this rainy season comes upon us in June, we will plant out those cleared properties and make them productive so that whomever wishes can reap where you haven't sown within the community. And we believe that that is one good way to keep the properties cleared and to encourage the spirit of sowing and reaping. In addition, on the 5th of May, we are launching our educational program that we call Destination Success. And it is a program that will be teaching reading, writing, and mathematics. It begins on the 5th of May, and it ends on the 28th of July. It's a Saturday program from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And all residents between the ages of 16 and 24 are invited to participate. And one final announcement, with the Minister of Works concurrence, I wish to announce that we will be beginning speed bumps. The implementation and construction of speed bumps in some of the areas in Nassau Village, particularly those roads that have very dangerous curves. We just suffered a serious accident only a week ago, a week and a half ago, to a young child. And so we're looking forward to that, where some of those roads that need streetlights as well as speed bumps will be looked into. And with that, we move on to the order of business, appointment of select committees, instructions to select committees, discharge of select committees, notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angerson.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I give notice that at the next meeting of the House, or so soon thereafter, I will move for the appointment of the following select committee. A select committee to examine all matters related to the proposed Oban project, to review the circumstances with regard to the signing of the heads of agreement, and to review and inquire into whether the tabling of the agreement dated the 19th of February 2018, constitutes an intentional misleading of the House, with power to send for persons and papers, with leave to sit from place to place, and with leave to sit during the recess.
Order that the notice be brought up. Order that the notice to lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Centerville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There are a few issues that I feel are far-reaching in terms of its impact in our country. And I would like to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I would like to move a motion in this honorable place for the appointment of the following select committees, which I term motions of sovereignty. Sovereign. At this stage, Mr. Speaker, in the Bahamas, I believe that it is important for us as Bahamians and for our children, those that are yet unborn, to identify with the spirit of sovereignty. The first motion would be for a select committee to investigate and deliberate online falsehoods, nowadays termed fake news, which has an indirect way of impacting and directing our culture. The committee will take submissions from the public and hold public hearings to gather feedback before reporting to the Parliament. There's a high risk of fake news that interferes even with our main economic engine and industries such as tourism and financial services. Disseminating of these deliberate falsehoods, particularly if it is done covertly, attacks the very heart of democracy by preventing constructive discourse. The second motion, Mr. Speaker, I intend to move will deal with our natural resources. I believe that we must be deliberate in our attempts to protect the natural beauty and maximize the natural resources gifted to us by our Almighty God. Parliamentarians, we must consider a select committee to explore how we can better protect and utilize our natural resources, aragonite, oil, sun, wind, sand, and sea, for the maximum benefit of our people. The select committee should investigate, examine, and review existing royalties and valuations received and being received from our natural resources, such as aragonite, sand, and our seabeds. These are already line items in our revenue budget, so there is a starting point. If lives are to be enriched, if there are to be better schools, affordable health care, and reduced criminal activity, it should be done for the benefit, not for the capital interest of a few, but for the sovereign interest of the many. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we look forward to a seconder for the motions and a constructive debate thereafter.
Honorable member, the chair would recommend that you sit with the clerk of the Parliament and formalize, yes, the select committees pursuant to Rule 21 and 22.
Yes.
Okay, for the next sitting.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Order that that notice be brought up. Order that the notice to lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, all questions laid in the name of Her Majesty's loyal opposition remain. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Notices, further notices for future meetings.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to renew all matters in the name of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and I do now move, Mr. Speaker, that the House adjourns to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 25th of April, 2018.
I do second that, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the House do adjourn to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 25th of April, 2018. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will rise. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns. Second.
The business of this House.
Okay. You can second.
House adjourns now
Spoken knows he can second.
to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 25th of April, 2018.